And just like that, we are back with another chapter, chapter 30 of the universe according to Mugsy. Today is Monday, April 29th, 2024. And we are talking current events, culture, and consciousness. God damn it, I can't get that right. I can't get that down. One of these days will fucking happen. This is going to be an interesting conversation. I don't know where the hell this is going to go. This is going to be a rabbit hole of all rabbit holes. Because understanding the present is fucking wild when you recognize the times that we're in. And it's starting to feel more and more like the book of Revelations here. It's time to find out who's got the receipts. Does that make sense? Because we started recording everything everybody was doing all the time in the early 2000s with the dawn of the internet age. And we've kind of gone along as if it was one big continuation of the 90s in terms of allowing the mainstream to really drive the narrative of our society and culture. But increasingly, as times have become more turbulent into the 21st century, it just is starting, the cracks have revealed themselves and the empire has started to crumble. And one of the things that the empire is trying to do right now that I think you guys are going to love. I think Aliens is always the best place to start these types of deep, meaningful conversations about consciousness, culture, and current events. I actually think Aliens are the only one that weaves all three. The spiritual, actually a current event because it's happening and we can see it all over the internet, and our culture. Because aliens have always been a part of our culture, but always driven or reserved in this realm of tabloid coverage, science fiction, right? All the movies are about aliens and books, but we're not allowed to talk about them as if they're real, which is kind of weird. And there've just been some interesting people having some interesting conversations. And in a time where, let's go back. If you're old enough, go back to the year 2000 and try and remember what was happening. Wild Wild West had just come out. Um, Forgot About Dre had not even come out yet. That was 2000. I think that was the end of 2000. Um, and why are we going back to 2000? I forgot where I was going with this. Okay. If I were to take you back to 2000 and I were to say to you, in the next decade, everyone is going to have a CIA tracking device in their pocket. And not only are they going to have it in their pocket, they're going to pay somewhere up to, what was it, maybe in 2010, $350 for the privilege to carry around one of these CIA tracking and recording devices. You would have called me crazy. You would have said you're nuts because you could never have conceived the iPhone that was right around the corner. What else? If I were to tell you in 2000 that there was a secret ring of pedophile elites that were pervasive throughout our government, our entertainment, throughout world government and entertainment, and they all flew to an island in the middle of the fucking ocean and they raped young children, you would have called me crazy. But everybody knows who Jeffrey Epstein is. It's just there's no more hiding in this new age that we are in. The age of Aquarius, if you believe the Mayan calendar, ended in 2012. The calendar didn't end. It was the end of an age. the age of Pisces, and now we are on to Aquarius. Oh my God, I'm connecting the dots. All right. So, what conversations you're going to love where I end this because let me call my fucking shot, okay? We're going to end this with why this is an unbelievable podcast and I'm way smarter or entertaining than Alex Cooper. Let's go with entertaining. I'm not going to go smarter. I'm going to go more entertaining than Alex Cooper of the famed Call Her Daddy success. And maybe we'll be able to tie her into this whole plot too. Who fucking knows? Who knows? But I'm going to reference a couple of podcasts off the jump. These are 3 hour long discussions that I would very much encourage you to take a look at. The first one is Flagrant 2, Andrew Schultz's podcast. Andrew Schultz is a comedian with Akash Sai as his co-host, and they had Billy Carson on April 24th, 2024, who reveals his alien encounters and lost civilization secrets. If that wasn't enough, we're also going to talk about Joe Rogan's interview with Bart Sibrel, who is a filmmaker, writer, and investigative journalist. He's the director of the films A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon and Astronauts Gone Wild, an investigation into the authenticity of the moon landings, and author of the book Moon Man, the true story of a filmmaker on the CIA hit list. And you can find out more information about him at Sibrel.com, Sibrel.com. And I'm going to include the links for all this shit because these conversations were wild. That was two of them. And Joe Rogan also had a conversation with Tucker Carlson that I'd love to get into, but I just don't know how much time we're going to have. And I know that you people aren't going to have the time to listen to all. I think I just referenced roughly 12 hours of podcasts, but we'll see how I do catching you up and diving into the actual fun of the conversation, which is living in a reality where these things exist. Because that's where we're at, people. And where's the best way to start? Perhaps Bart is our best start. Mr. Sibrel, I knew nothing about you. I knew nothing about you a couple weeks ago. But as I have reached out to my community of connected friends, I've found that, this guy's been at dispelling the idea that we have gotten out of inner earth atmosphere, utilizing a lot of documentation that is unquestionable, and no good explanations have been given yet. These are important. These are important things to notice. As we're going to go on here, we're going to talk about current events as they come up and how our culture receives them, the different possibilities of what may or may not have happened, and what those outcomes would have looked like had they happened. Because that's the thick of it. This is not a story that started in 2000. This isn't a story that started in 1900. Motherfucker, this game's been going on for a long time. And we're right in the middle of it. And if you listen to the last episode, you know that I believe passionately that we are at the most turbulent times in modern history. And I define modern history as the last 2,000 years. How do I know that? Because the speed of increase in technology has reached exponential growth. That's what this AI thing is. Now, that means everything's going to change. How? Shit, I sit here and I tell you all the time that I predict the future. And there is no predicting the next age. I don't know which way to go. All right, Bart, I love you, but we're going to talk a little bit about Billy Carson and these ages. So it's not just the Mayans, right? The Mayans, the Incans, the Aztecs, the Sumerians, the Chinese, like the Mongolians. All of these cultures had calendars and they all had different ages. Bronze Age, um, just a whole bunch of different fucking ages. And the Mayan calendar specifically, which had the end of the world, quote unquote, being 2012, had all of these ages as well, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, all that. But the age that we're in currently, the age of Aquarius, it had no name because nobody knew what this age would be. Which is crazy. When we go back and we look at all of the ancient texts, right? All of them. I'm talking about the Bible, but I'm not just talking about the Bible. I'm talking about the book of Enoch. I'm talking about all of the books that got thrown out. I'm talking about all of the lost files that we've discovered over the years that the Vatican has been like, no, 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 don't fucking pay attention to that. Only listen to these 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Fuck you, okay? So if we look at the cuneiform fucking tablets that we have in Egypt, how nobody knew what this next thing was going to be. And we're right in the middle of it. There's literally no more exciting time to be alive in history. And I mean, I'm waiting for someone to come with the receipts on that. Oh, no, actually, 1862 was actually a much more statistically interesting time. Fuck you. The White House told us aliens were real like 2 years ago, and nobody said shit. Yep. Well, if the government's telling us now, it must be misinformation. Maybe. But it seems like one of those ones the government's just going to be like, yeah, of course aliens were real. How do you think we built the pyramids? And then they're just going to be like, wait a minute, that's what we were saying the whole time. You can't, how did you just flip flop? You're not allowed to flip flop. You're the government. Well, we just did. What are you going to do about it? Yeah, aliens are real. We've been keeping it a secret from you the whole time. Oh, that is interesting. Right? Because if you go back and you look at the ancient text, you're going to see mention of aliens all over the place. Our history is littered with text, including the Bible, which Mr. Billy Carson discusses. And I thought this was an important part. The Garden of Eden as a mating lab for us, human civilization, because the aliens couldn't figure out a way to get us to procreate without their intervention. So they had to create a lab, much like what we're fucking doing right now with all this genetic testing. Oh my God, it all ties together. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, people. So if you think about the mention of the Garden of Eden in that sense, as some place on Earth in some way walled off where aliens could experiment. And what's interesting about his theory is he has evidence, right? He points to a specific chromosome in the DNA line that was spliced, seemingly put together, and then tied off on the ends with, God damn it, I'm forgetting all my scientific vernacular at this the telomeres. Now, scientists want you to believe that that was a natural evolution, but nobody knows how it happened. Nobody could do it again. And they want you to believe that that happened over thousands and thousands of years. But there's no evidence of that. In fact, the evidence point to one day it looked like this, and on the second day it looked like this. Well, now, my friends, do we have the unification of religious text, mythical alien intervention? Who the fuck knows? I don't know. But that's interesting. That's an interesting world to live in. And if the government's just going to conveniently gloss over the fact that they've known aliens have been around for a long time, then what? Who's this Bart Sibrel guy and how does he tie into it? Well, if you got to the moon and aliens are real, you must have seen something that you're not telling us about. And if you've never gone on one of these deep dives before, I very much encourage you to do so because there are some questions that just can't be answered. Like why the moon rung like a bell when NASA did an experiment where something landed on it, right? And that sound couldn't be heard. That sound could be heard on instruments all around the universe, right? So it wasn't only the United States that heard that, which meant other people heard it too. Like who? Who else had technology to hear those things? Who else was in the space race? Oh, the Soviet Union knew. Now things are getting interesting, right? So there is footage of NASA engineers, plenty of times, discussing the fact that we cannot get to the moon because we destroyed all of the technology we had to get there. They want you to believe they went to the moon in a rocket ship 1/8 the width of aluminum, protecting them from the radiation of the sun. Well, that's not possible. You know how we know this? X-ray machines. When you go and get an X-ray at the dentist, they put a lead vest on you. They didn't used to do that. In fact, they used to take the X-rays with their hand in the picture. The problem was people got horrible hand cancers because they didn't know about the X-ray radiation. Then they started developing a lot more protective techniques around this. Well, that radiation separates our inner Earth atmosphere, where all the satellites and the space stations are, and outer Earth atmosphere. And you'll catch NASA engineers on live mics, even in interviews, telling you that we've never figured out a way to get past inner Earth radiation. So then how did we go to the moon in 1969? And other people knew this. Other countries. Interesting. Interesting. What does a world look like? Let's just live in this crazy, crazy planet for a moment, hypothetically, where the United States did fake the moon landing. We never sent actual human astronauts onto the face of the moon. Wow. Looks like people can keep secrets. But there would have to be a lot of misinformation involved. So at that time, what else was going on? Kennedy had just been assassinated. If they were able to fake the moon landing, it certainly seems like they were able to fake the Kennedy assassination, or they were able to do the Kennedy assassination. I have a funky feeling, based on the belief of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., candidate for president in the 2024 election, and all of his years and years of investigation and his belief in Oliver Stone's theory that JFK died in a barrage of gunfire. That wouldn't be hard to believe, given that these people convinced the world that they put people on the moon with 1/4 the technology you now carry around in your pocket. Something's fishy. Something's fishy. All right, so they killed Kennedy. They faked the moon landing. other countries know about it, there's some kind of collusion going on at the top of this whole heap. Who would have ever thunk it? And, you know, I don't know how these guys do it. I would be scared shitless if I were Bart Sibrel or um, this other guy, Billy Carson. It There are a lot of heavy implications for very powerful people at the top of all of these heaps. Now, most of the people from the moon landing, anybody involved, would be long dead. Same thing with the Kennedy assassination. So why haven't they released the papers? Oh, guys, you see, this game is still going on. This game is still being played. This war is still being waged upon us. It's you and me, motherfuckers. We are the lower class. We are the slave class. If you were under the misconception that the government in any way, shape, or form was here to help you, those illusions should be dispelled based on a mounting level of credible evidence being dispelled by people much more credible than I. I'm just the motherfucking observer. I'm the creator of the conversation. I'm the one saying, hey, isn't this an interesting conversation over here? Here's this guy talking about aliens, lost civilizations, Derinkuyu, pyramids, the Garden of Eden. He's using ancient texts to point to obvious examples of ancient cultures trying to pass along information to future generations about the world, the universe, how it works, what we're all doing here, how we got here in the first place. And here's this other guy pointing out that there's no possible way that we got to the moon in 1969, and we still don't know how to do it now. And here's a bunch of reasons from a filmmaker. That guy was a filmmaker, Bart Sibrel. He is a filmmaker. On classic film editing mistakes that have been revealed in FISA requests from NASA itself, and their own mistakes because of things that they've published. That's the problem with history, is it always finds a way of coming back up. As much as people like to keep secrets, they eventually, you like to think that they will be revealed, and motherfucker, does it not feel like we are in the time of revelations? Wild ride. So those were some interesting conversations. You guys can watch a Tucker Carlson one if you want. Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. I've been waiting for that conversation for a long time because that's where I'm at in my understanding of the present. Is I know when the internet's going to be set on fire before it happens. And how did I have an indication of this? You guys really want to know? I don't know if you want to know. All right, Kill Tony. They talked about this on the podcast. When Tucker Carlson went to Austin, Texas, people noticed. I was one of those people. I've seen Tucker Carlson travel around the world for interviews. And I've seen him do a lot of interviews over Zoom. So if he's in Austin, Texas, he's in Austin, Texas for one reason. Talk to Joe Rogan. And it was a great conversation. One of the big enlightening points is there's been a couple of books that have come out. I wish I had one of the author's name offhand, but I didn't prep it. And I don't even remember where I picked up his interview. But President Nixon was elected by 49 out of 50 states, that 50th state being Massachusetts, who has voted Democrat in every fucking presidential election forever, because we're a bunch of closed-minded, good-intentioned people, I guess. But Nixon was much more of a tool than people realize, and it seems like his removal from office was orchestrated by the deep state. Because what most people, Woodward and Bernstein, for those of you who don't know, were the two reporters from the Washington Post who broke Watergate, the Watergate scandal that eventually removed Richard Nixon from office. Now, what they don't tell you is Woodward, 2 months prior, was an intelligence asset for the Navy. He had never done any work in journalism before, and his first story just happened to be the story of a generation. It is quite literally the story that people use to epitomize what journalism is. Do you guys understand that this facade's been going on for a long time? Like, are these dots connecting for you? All of this information's out there. Read a fucking book. Or listen to a podcast. Fascinating. Fascinating. How much truth to it? I don't know. Right? There's two sides to every story. But I'm a results-oriented individual. And I am starting to see how all of these pieces kind of fit together over the decades. Because now that there is crumble and there is rot, we're able to see how it got there. What broke? Oh, there have been some systems breaking down. And perhaps that's why people feel comfortable revealing these secrets. Who knows? But anyways, I digress. Just like I was talking about the Massachusetts people, they want to think they're so fucking open-minded, and they're not even close. They're so surrounded in their echo chamber, and I know it because I live in it. All right, that's the reason that I know it. That anything outside of the echo chamber is so outlandish that it's not even possible. So I like to try and get outside of my own echo chamber as much as I can, and it's frustrating. Man, it's so frustrating to listen to some of this. But yesterday, man, me and the wife went for a ride up to Gloucester, 128, and we got to listen to Call Her Daddy with Alex Cooper. Man, that's an interesting story. I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by the way that she captures the female demographic so rabidly. Her fan base is just insane for all of the content that she puts out, which has always fascinated me. Now, I followed the rise of her career, I thought, pretty well. She was a socialite. I mean, I guess that's the best. She was a soccer player at Northeastern or BU. And then she at some point decided she wanted to do a podcast. She started it with a girl named Sophia Franklin. She was a socialite. She was known as the girlfriend of Mets pitcher Jason Lefty no. I don't know. He was a Mets pitcher. Apparently he was a big deal, but he never went on to do anything, I'm pretty sure. Who gives a shit? She got famous for dating him. And then she started kind of a sex podcast called Call Her Daddy. And she talked about the Gluck Gluck 3000, which was the best blowjob skills with this girl, Sophia Franklin. And they sold this idea to Dave Portnoy at Barstool Sports in some way, shape, or form. Not sold it. They leased it out, right? But technically, Dave Portnoy owned the brand Call Her Daddy. That's going to be an important part of this story. And that was kind of how they got famous, and they took off pretty quickly. Both of them were everywhere fast and became large merchandise movers, which means that they have the ability to move product for advertisers, which is key in evaluating their value for a company like Spotify or a platform like Barstool to have interest in them. So they renegotiated their contract a couple times. They got some more money, but eventually it was never enough. Greed's interesting. And there was some sort of suit guy from HBO who came in and he was dating Sophia Franklin, planted a bug in her ear that they were worth $10 million or something like that. And it caused a divide during COVID where somehow Alex Cooper was able to get the rights to the podcast from Dave Portnoy for free. She would own her copyright outright, her trademark, the brand, if she continued to do the podcast. Because he was in a tough spot, he was willing to make that deal. Hey, business people make deals. And that's where this part of the story gets interesting, because Alex Cooper is no longer just a sex-minded comedy brand where she gives women advice on how to perform in the bedroom. Now she's captured and garnered an audience where she has different guests on and she has interviews, and I guess sometimes she does solo podcasts and talks to herself, and I guess she takes questions from her audience, and I don't know. It's like they want to believe in her, but nobody's listening to the words that are coming out of her mouth. That's interesting. It's like, who are the snake oil salesmen of our generation? And she could sell anything, right? And she's selling this idea. So anyways, we started listening to this goddamn podcast. It was so interesting. And maybe this is why everybody listens to her, because some people love her and other people love to hate her. I don't know. I would love to have her on the podcast just to have a discussion about kind of how she came up, because my theory is the CIA intervened somewhere in there. Once they found out that she could get the copyright herself, somebody decided that she could be an asset in some way, shape, or form. Because it was like she was invited into a club, and then everything went right for her, almost from inception, which was weird. The only thing that was a hitch was Portnoy owning the content. And once Portnoy was removed, then it was like gasoline was added to the fire, and everybody picked her up before, where she was a taboo subject before. Really fucking interesting how quickly that happened. And then she got this huge Spotify deal, and Logan told a story about the first time she was on the Logan Paul Impulsive, whatever the fuck it is. They did a podcast together, and after, she said to him, she's like, "Hey, can I suck your dick? Because I think it would be great for my memoirs," or whatever, or she wanted to, I don't know, maybe she just thought he was hot. And apparently she did, because he told the story. Now that's incredibly intelligent for someone who's willing to go to the ends of the earth to get their brand. And I'm not even saying it's self-devaluing in any way. I mean, shit, I'm a guy. I would love to look like Logan Paul, you know? I work out. I don't look like him. Maybe she just wanted to because that's what young people wanted. I get it. Like, I get that. But she's smart. You don't get to the top of this whole fucking thing, the whole pyramid, without being incredibly tactful in your maneuvering, especially among people who could grow your brand. So Logan opened his fucking mouth like all young men do, and he told that fucking story on another podcast or to his friend who, got it out there. And it just feeds into this, I don't know, conspiracy theory that I have, but how she's feeding some deeper agenda. Now, I don't think she's in the stage where she's acting or trying to get people to think a certain way, but rather the type of lifestyle that she is discussing and promoting to young women has value to a group of powerful people, whether or not she recognizes she is doing their bidding. That's kind of how this works, I think. I don't know. Who the fuck knows? I'm just a guy on the internet with like 8 followers on Patreon. But let's get into her. Oh my God, I'm just rambling. I sound like her. I could wax poetic on this topic for a while. I'm just so intrigued for a lot of reasons. So her last episode was about her honeymoon and her husband, who is a movie producer. By the way, I didn't go into any background on this guy. I wanted to give you the fresh takes. I didn't look anything up on him, but it was curious to her as she told a 45-minute story about riding on a train for the first time, seemingly as if it were interesting because other people may have not ridden on a train at any point in their life. That in and of itself is so belittling to the audience. It's like, you think I got 45 minutes to listen to you talk about a motherfucking train? Fuck out of here. I don't know. So it was just flabbergasting to me that he had never been on a train and he wanted to ride on the Orient Express. Now, this is a very famous train. Maybe the most famous train. I don't particularly know. I'm not a train enthusiast, but I do know autistic people are train enthusiasts. I know that specifically. I'm not connecting any dots. I'm just putting some things out there so that you guys can make any connections that you want. Now, this guy's a movie producer, and he lived in the United States his whole life, and he comes from a wealthy family. Okay, I get why this guy's never taken a train, but now you have to get into the mind and the life of somebody who has never ridden a fucking train, never got on a subway. All right? So that is a life of leisure in and of itself. You've never had to get on that mode of transportation, never had to use it for long-term transit. Okay, I guess it's possible because I understand that trains are not the largest mode of travel in the United States. But this is a rich guy. He must have traveled all around the globe. High-speed rail in Asia and Europe is one of the most common things and ways that people travel. So if you are traveled, then even in your world travels, you never encountered a time where you had to get on a train? And Alex fucking Cooper, who are you that you've never heard of the Orient Express? They have books, movies. They made another remake of an Adam Sandler riff, Murder on the Orient Express. Come on. Do we have any shared culture anymore? So between the two of you fucks, you just riff for 45 and she can't stop getting out of her own way. I mean, every story is, I'm going to give her as much credit as I possibly can. She was seemingly on her way to her honeymoon. My guess is this is a time for her to relax. This is a time for her to cut back. Have a couple drinks. She was drinking like a fucking fish, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's important you know that. You should do whatever the fuck calls you. But I understand why there is money in promoting the message and stories that she has. Because that might as well have been a 45-minute advertisement for vodka. No specific brand. And hangovers. And being a trash bag human in terms of the way that you look at how other people, like, never at one point in this 45-minute rant about how it was to ride on a train. She just kept saying it was bumpy and motion sickness. And never did she realize that this is how people get to fucking work at 5 o'clock in the fucking morning. Okay? It's still fucking dark out. People are half asleep, trying not to get molested and accosted, standing in the frigid cold with drunk people and migrants and I don't know, criminals, people puking, mentally insane people. Like, never did you think about how this is how a lot of the world travels every day, and they have to fucking put food on the table. And you have it so good that your first ride on a train will be on the fucking picturesque Orient Express, which travels from fucking London to Istanbul across the length of Europe. I mean, it's got to be the best train ever for an autistic guy. Oh, I just keep trying to remind myself love and empathy, love and empathy, love and empathy. Man, the worst day this guy has ever had in his life is the worst day that this guy's ever had in his life. How could he ever understand what it's like to get up at 4 in the morning and drive to that fucking train station? Fucking wait in that cold so that you can go make $13.50 an hour. Fucking lugging lumber or doing whatever the fuck you got to do to put food on the table, man. Oh, how could you? How could you? But I just can't get over the fact that people are entertained by it because she is seemingly now a happy woman who got to her place in life by talking about sex, then acting like she never talked about sex, getting promoted to have discussions with seemingly important people in our entertainment, music, I'm just going to call it overall culture. And my guess is to never ask those people hard-hitting questions and promote a lifestyle of partying and drinking. And she told a story about trying to catch your men cheating, and we're going to get them, daddy gang. We're after these men. Do what you got to do. Like, you shouldn't be looking through his phone, but if he's cheating, you're planting a bug in these young women's mind that all of the men in their life are horrible people and cheaters. And the only way that they have value is that if they are able to provide you with a lifestyle that affords you the luxury of never having to drive around in trains, except for on the way to your honeymoon. People that truly love trains, could you imagine how jealous they are of this girl who gets to ride the Orient Express, and not just the Orient Express, ride it on the way to her honeymoon? That's just how we're getting there. Sure, we could have flown private or first class, but my autistic husband had never ridden a train before. It's just out of touch. It's just out of touch. Yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough to have love and empathy, but I'm just flabbergasted by how much attention these people garner. And I can't help but think it's being propped up by something that's not people's true intention. They're watching it because everybody else is fucking watching it, and they've never seen anything that's actually fucking interesting. Because everything out there is brainwashing. Continue to do as you're told and not ask questions. It's starting to seem more and more every day. Like, that's how this whole game is set up. Almost like the Wizard of Oz. Oh my God, that's a callback, bitches. But I don't have time to talk to you guys all day. I got shit to do. 45 minutes in. Oh my God. I will include those links. Feel free to take a dive on this shit. We are going to continue the conversation. And my boy, CEO of a financial services company, Zach Babin, is going to join the program. We're going to hear a little bit about, I'm sure, his journey, what it's like to conceive an idea in your brain and have to go out and sell that fucking idea and sell it like it's the most important thing you've ever sold, and do that to people in venture capital with money and get them to put their money in your fucking pocket and bet on you. Babin's got a great story, and it's interesting the way that they started off. They pivoted. That's what, I'm sure we'll get into this with Babin, but that's what great companies do. I figured out how the world works. I've told you guys a million times because of my background in economics. If you want to understand how the world works, find out how the money works. And once you find out the money's all fake, okay, now we're getting somewhere. But great businesses have to pivot. Netflix was really interesting. They tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster. Blockbuster was stupid at the time for not seeing the value in what they had. But at the time, all they had was the value in the contracts they had with the studios, which allowed them to get the DVDs for cheap. Now, the studios were never going to agree to that contract again, and Netflix was going to go out of business very early on in the teens of the 2000s, 2012, 13, 14. And Netflix pivoted big time. And what they said was, we're going to utilize all of the revenue that we're getting off of these contracts that we have with these studios, and we're going to become a studio. We're going to pay these directors, these actors, these A-list writers, and we're going to create a library of our own content that people can't get anywhere other than Netflix. So in addition to the fact that you guys are going to fuck us in terms of our DVD, we're going to re-up that contract, but instead we're going to re-up it for streaming rights of all of your fucking movies. And what are those worth? Those are worth nothing because nobody streams, right? Streaming was nothing back then. And in addition to that, we're going to create our own content that nobody can get anywhere but Netflix. And they're going to join our service so that they can see our show. And in addition, they're going to get a fucking bajillion of your movies for nothing but the price of a movie ticket at the time. $9.99, $7.99, $5, whatever the fuck Netflix was back in the day. So Zach's business had to pivot. And seemingly he's going to tell us how that pivot went and what it's like. Hopefully we're going to be able to dive into some of the vernacular. Babin's well versed in not only business, technology, finance. He's got an MBA, but also psychology, which is an interesting angle to have a discussion with somebody in the business tech field with. So he's going to come on the program whenever he's got a couple hours to fucking spare. These are important fucking people. We got authors coming on. We got tech geniuses. We got CEOs. This is the Joe Rogan experience, except for it's the universe according to Mugsy. And the reason it's the universe according to Mugsy is because I'm trying to convince you to take back your fucking consciousness. There's a million amazing things that are going out on in the world, and you're never going to get any of them by listening to Alex Cooper tell you a story about what it's like to be on a fucking train. Because you've probably been on a fucking train. And if you want to understand where we all come from and how we got there, there are people investigating that. And they're investigating beyond the text that we're, quote unquote, allowed to look at. Okay? Because Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, my guess is they didn't cover everything in the last 2,000 years of human history. They might have left some shit out. And maybe some other people wrote some shit down. So, or Bart. Bart's got an incredible documentary and book out. Or watch the conversation he had with Joe Rogan. I'm just going to point you guys in the direction of people that are doing amazing, interesting things. And it's going to be up to you to decide who's talking passionately about what it is that they're discussing with you. And it's going to be up to you to decide whether that person's full of shit or whether they're not. I've gotten duped before. This isn't going to be the first time. It won't be the last time that I get duped. Some of these people that we're going to have on are going to dupe me. Some of them I'm just going to be polite to. And you're going to have to figure out when I'm doing that. That's how this whole thing works. And I learned by watching 2,652 episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience. Because what Joe Rogan taught the entire world is having a conversation is a fucking art. And that art propels us forward. Together, we participate in it. All right? So who is having the interesting conversations around you? Why are you not a part of these interesting conversations? My guess is you got to start paying attention to some of the things that are going on, and you'll find that you are not too far from them. And if you got any issues with that, submit a fucking question to me, Mugsy the Creator, at patreon.com/Mugsy the Creator. And that's the only advertisement you get, because that's how we do things here. Now remember, everybody, take back your consciousness. I love you. I'm out.